Our next speaker is Dr. Pamela Sugiman, the Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Professor of Sociology at Toronto Metropolitan University, formerly Ryerson University. She has been a Dean of Faculty of Arts since July 2016. Prior to this, she was chair of the Department of Sociology since 2012. And over the course of her career, Pam has built a reputation for transparency, creativity, vision, and cooperation. She's committed to the issues of social justice, equality, and inclusion, both as an academic leader and as a researcher. And as Dean of Arts, she has promoted the recruitment of Indigenous faculty, development of Indigenous education, democratic engagement, migration and immigration, and student engagement around the anti-racism work, which ties in very well with what you were suggesting as well, Ellen. So thank you so much, Pam, for being with us today. We appreciate your voice.
Thank you so much for the invitation and that kind introduction. So as you've noted, I mean, I've been challenging racism for many decades as an academic researcher, later as chair of a department, and currently in my role as Dean of the Faculty of Arts at Toronto Metropolitan University, of course, previously known as Ryerson University. The Academy has become my home. And university work, whether it be in the form of scholarly research, teaching, or administrative leadership, is what most engages and animates me. As a racialized woman from the working class, often I still do feel like a fraudulent interloper or imposter in the academy, yet at the same time, it's what I know best. This wasn't always the case. Many decades ago, public school first and later the university campus were spaces in which I felt like an unwelcome stranger. Not sure if that's it. During the Second World War, my Japanese Canadian Nisei or second generation parents and their families were deemed to be enemy aliens on the basis of their race. Because of their race, they lost almost everything. They were uprooted from their homes in British Columbia, interned, incarcerated in the case of my father, dispossessed of their property and possessions, and forcibly relocated and assimilated in the province of Ontario. And growing up in farm and laboring families, they did not have privilege. Thus, notwithstanding the war, it's unlikely that they would have been able to further their studies beyond the first few years of high school. The internment and the racism behind it, however, ensured the path to higher education was blocked. In order to resettle in Ontario, my mother had to assume a position as a paid domestic worker in the home of an affluent white family in Toronto. My father earned a living in Ontario as a laborer on road camps and later as a taxi driver. And both my parents kept these jobs for all of their lives. My parents never escaped or forgot their treatment and experiences during the war. But these experiences and their memories did not come to define or destroy Ross and Ritzy Sugiman. Over the years, they faced intense, blatant, and subtle racism, and in order to uphold personal dignity and in defense of their family, they worked hard, purchased a house, lived quiet lives, believed in the power of education, and struggled for a better life for their child. As a child, and even as a young teenager, I did not speak in school. It was not reticence on my part. I did not speak. From early on, silence became part of my modus operandi. It felt unsafe to speak in class. On the rare occasion when I did try to utter some words in my racially homogeneous white middle-class school in the 1960s and 70s, I spoke so softly that no one could hear me. The few times that I struggled to answer a question in class, some of my kind and sensitive schoolmates would hush everyone, including the teacher, and yell, "Be quiet, she's trying to say something." I know that I'm not alone in saying that for those of us who have experienced intergenerational racism, fractured racial identities, sexism and class barriers, educational institutions, universities in particular, can be both constraining and expansive. They can be places in which we deny our authenticity, our true selves, and a place where we form friendships with strangers and learn about radical new ideas. For me, the university opened up the world and it helped me to develop a critical lens for viewing it. And now, as an academic dean, I have the privilege of engaging in conversations with university students and faculty members about their own sense of belonging or not belonging, their ideas, their lived experiences, and their concerns. Through conversation, I've been able to facilitate the visionary projects of Indigenous faculty, with those who are fighting against anti-Black racism, anti-Muslim racism, and anti-Semitism. And in my view, it's insightful, impactful as well to be able to facilitate dialogue on these pressing problems and to work towards transformative change. So late last year, inspired by the inaugural UBC Forum on Anti-Asian Racism, the Faculty of Arts at TMU hosted the second forum on anti-Asian racism. We focused on the lived experiences of racialized groups and systemic racism in the university sector. Our overriding goal was to promote informed nationwide dialogue among different groups who identify as Asian, Canadian, or Asian, and between Asian, Canadian students, staff, and faculty on university campuses, those who are fighting against anti-Black racism and colonization. I believe that we reached our goal with over 1,000 individuals in dialogue, 118 speakers, and 24 sessions and special programs. And through all of this, I heard conversations about a myriad topics: invisibility in the academy, the racially divisive model minority myth, the bamboo ceiling, the institutionalization and perhaps inherent conservatizing tendencies of the acronym EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion, expressions of white fragility, reimagined curriculum, community-based learning and teaching. And participants also posed questions about whether or not one can actually make transformative change within the institution as it currently exists. And if so, how do we do this? And there were questions raised about the ethics of outsider research on our communities. So we learned many lessons, and we must recognize and respect that our experiences and histories are distinctive, but there are structural linkages, and we would do well to understand these complex connections. And likewise, it's dangerous and divisive to frame our struggles as competing, to talk about hierarchies of oppression. And importantly, and this is the most important lesson to me, transformative change cannot be achieved if we work in silos. Transformative change for the better, depends on allyship and bridging solidarities. And I'm very pleased to say that I believe Tina Chen will be speaking later, that the University of Manitoba is picking up the baton and has plans to continue the dialogue that was initiated at UBC and continued at Toronto Metropolitan University. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pam. I love how you tied in the narratives of your lived experience with the challenges that do exist within the academic sphere and environment, particularly as related to women and to those of us who are from a racialized background. The work that you are doing is an inspiration to many of us. So thank you again, and we are honored to have you on our call today. The next speaker, and before transitioning over, I want to thank everyone again for their patience. I know we're a bit off our schedule, but again, it's such an important event and everyone brings so much passion to it that we didn't want to interrupt anybody. So thank you for the passion and patience with which you are all showing.